Hey, good morning, everyone. Mark Westcott here, and today I've got living legend, Bruce Wright. How are you, Bruce?
Well, thanks, Mark. How are you, mate?
Yeah, very good, buddy. Last week I had a beautiful, gorgeous blonde lady I was talking to, and this week I've got you.
I don't even know if I pass as the old grey fox or anything now.
You're doing fine, buddy. Anyway, it's great to see you here today. And Bruce, let's just start off by talking about your background. Obviously, you went to a fantastic school, TSS. Seems to be an association there somewhere. But you were in the first stage. You were in a winning crew, and you went on to row schoolboys for Queensland. Do you want to just talk about that as part of our introduction for you this morning?
Yeah, I guess I was lucky enough. I entered TSS in '76, and it was sort of at the time where things were building up, I guess, for rowing. I played rugby as well. Some people might forget, right? I don't, but they can coexist. But anyway, I think early on, I must have been about grade 5 or 6 when the '78 crew, Chick Graham, won. And there was this whole sort of dimension of TSS and rowing that had been part of the history. So I had to leave being 12th man and doing the scoring of the cricket as soon as I could and get into rowing. And lucky enough, in hindsight, to be at that starting point of the Isle of Lee era, where he won 5 heads of the river in 7 years. So it was great that way. Made the 8 in '84, got coached by Jeremy King, another legend of the TSS rowing shed there in '83. We won that. So there was certainly a building culture there that ended up being what it was.
Yeah, that was a golden time, wasn't it? Certainly when Isla started coaching there, and mate, you went on to row for Queensland schoolboys as well.
Yeah, so we sort of loved it so much in the Queensland Youth 8. Yeah, so I sort of lived partly in Brisbane and working again. Another rowing coach had some cold stores out at Hamilton, so I was working there after rowing in the morning session and coming down the coast to work a bit further and then driving back up for training out at Commercial Rowing Club. We went on to the Nationals that year down in South Australia and got pipped by Victoria. So that was the end of my illustrious rowing career, and it sort of sounded a bit easier to be in a tinny coaching than it was about rowing.
And you are a guy, I'd really admire this about you, Bruce. You're a guy that gives back. You did a lot. I think you still do, and you certainly have done a lot of coaching for TSS over the years as well. So whilst you're in the history books at TSS as a stroke of a winning crew, you certainly have given back to the school in many ways as well.
Oh, look, I think it's been a great place, and for the time and place for me to have some sort of stability that the school offered me at the time, and also lifelong friends. That I catch up with every week now. It's been a great part of my life for so long. So the easiest thing is to give back to something that you believe in.
Yeah, look, absolutely. And in fact, you went on to be on the school council, and you were president of the Old Boys Association too. So real credit to you, Bruce. You've certainly given a lot back to the school, and I know people are very grateful for the contribution that you made. So good job.
Thanks, Mark.
Mate, you know that I started this. We've had a chat. You know, I started tea and scones, and just to be sure, I'm not. I am keeping the tradition going. I started this as a positive way to start off the week for when COVID started, and really put a cat amongst the pigeons for so many people, and we'll get to that. But I thought it was a good positive way to start the week to focus on what is working. To talk about gratitude, what sort of routines and so on that people go through. Do you have Bruce? Do you have a routine that you do to keep your mindset right? Because you more than anyone have had plenty of reasons this year to with what COVID's done to your business, which I'll come to in a little while. But you've had plenty of reasons certainly to be kicked in the belly, I guess. So what do you do to keep yourself, fresh, positive, and so on?
I think I've learnt to try and keep things in perspective. I was always a bit of a, heart on the sleeve type of person. I think the best thing actually that you could look at COVID has been reassessing, and I'd already sort of cottoned onto this, but just about family, because there's no one else you can depend on more than. and making sure that it's a reciprocal thing. Just going back in hindsight, I got a job with the Australian Rugby Union, actually, with the Bills back tour when we won the World Cup in '99. My son was born in 2000, so you have a look at a situation like that. And I was on the road for a couple of years doing all that sort of stuff and having a great time going to rugby tests and all the rest of it, while Jan was at home raising our first son for a while. So you look at that and just, you've got to make sure that you're right at home and you can give as much support there. So I owe everything as far as the positiveness in my life to my family, because we've gone ups and down some hills, but certainly they've been there the consistent time.
Yep, yeah, family is very important. And another thing I'll come back to is that you took over your dad's business too, didn't you? So it's been from one generation to the next as far as Primex is concerned. And if I can just hang on a sec, but I'll certainly come back to Primex. I'm just going to stick with the school for a minute, Bruce. And we were talking the other day, and you told me the story about the Western tour that you did to promote TSS to rural families, because when the headmaster at the time turned up, he wanted to reinstill, I guess, the opportunity for rural people to send their kids down to a great school like TSS to build the boarding numbers back up with rural people, rather than, I think there was a lot of international students and so on at that stage. And the school had been built on people from the bush in a lot of ways, hasn't it? TSS has always been a very rural focused school, certainly in my time there. Most of the kids were from out west and so on. So do you want to just talk about what you did on your bush tour? I enjoyed chatting with you about it the other day.
Well, it was obviously Greg Wayne, who's just about to finish off this year. It was part of his strategic vision to re-engage with the bush. The advantage I had was obviously having access to a bit more history of the school and all that sort of thing, and to picture someone like the founder of the school, Henry Dixon, hopping on his horse and heading west and going through places like Durham Bandy and Roma and that sort of thing back in the day to do recruitment. You were at the school at a really significant time too, Mark, because it went from basically a 99% boarding school to John Day introduced the day boys coming into it. And you look at it strategically in hindsight and go, if John Day hadn't have done that, where would TSS be now? But the country boarding has been the heart and soul of the Southport School, and for a lot of boarding schools around Australia. You don't get anything more genuine than the bush kids coming in. And they certainly teach the city boys a lot in terms of what it is to work hard and commit and dedicate yourself. So the following the footsteps of the founder was really about re-engaging and getting Greg, and at the time being on the council and the Old Boys president, was a great opportunity for us too, from the alumni point of view, to re-engage with a lot of them, because I think we're now entering a situation at TSS where there's now a fifth generation of family sending their sons there. So it's pretty amazing history, and it's something that shouldn't be forgotten. But we headed off, so there was Greg, Ian Brown, who was the junior boarding master, and myself. We headed off from here down to Armidale, and then went through Gunnedah and up through Lightning Ridge and Durham Bandy and Charleville and Cunnamulla and up to Longreach, and then across Emerald, Roma, Chinchilla and home, which was a big week, but it was an amazing week just to re-engage with so many fantastic people.
Seriously, you did all that in 1 week?
Yeah, and we lived to tell the tale.
What did you do? One town in the morning and one in the afternoon, basically?
Well, we'd take off in the morning and we'd have a lunchtime or a late morning, depending on what the distance was. But it'd be drive in the morning, get as much done as we could, have that lunchtime or late morning tea and scones, and then I remember one day specifically, it was we had a late morning session in Charleville and then drove all the way to Longreach that late afternoon, And that was a fair
Wow.
up. Then we did Longreach that night. And then we had a little bit of time because our next stop was out at Bill Chandler's at Barcaldine the next day for lunch. So we went and checked all that out, Hall of Fame and all that sort of thing. Had lunch there and then dinner at Emerald, and that's just sort of how it was. But it was easy in so many ways because obviously the things we were able to talk to in the car. I do remember one thing when because I used to sort of probably put the wind up Greg a little bit every now and again, and I remember grabbing some documents that was a strategic marketing report that had been generated, I think, during the course of the previous decade, and it was about 3 inches thick. And we were driving between, I think it was Tambo and the next town, and I pulled it out from behind the seat and I said, "Now, Greg, I just want to have a bit of a chat about this strategic marketing plan." And he nearly drove off the road. It was only a prop, but anyway, it was part of the humour that we were able to have, but it seemed to work very well.
Yeah, and what a great job you must have done too, because certainly there's been a trend back to rural boarding at the school, and it's great to see that again too. Great to see a number of the boys from out bush coming back and populating the school, even though they're way outnumbered these days. They're certainly making their presence felt.
Yeah.
Now, from a business point of view, before we talk about what's happened this year, Bruce, and good to see you've got your cup of tea there. Would you like me to pass you a scone? Or?
Yes, thanks.
Let's talk about Primex. You've got a fantastic business, and this has come down. You know, your dad started this, and you've obviously picked it up and grown it to record levels in the last few years. So, do you want to just talk about what Primex is and what you do with Primex each year and how it's helping those people in the rural industries?
Well, there was a bit more background just initially because we actually had a business on the Gold Coast and one at Alstonville called Right Hire. And that was in the late 70s and early 80s. And Dad saw that there was a low time in season for that sort of, marquees and party hire. So we started a marketing company. And that marketing company basically ended up being the tail that wagged the dog. We ended up doing boat shows, catering and hospitality shows. This one, pretty much from Cairns down to south of Coffs Harbour, Port Macquarie. So my initial job coming into the family business was Right Hire until we sold it in 1988, and that's when I got involved with Primex. And then we sort of worked on that together for a very long time. In recent times, we sort of went through, we had a 30th anniversary in 2014, and Dad wanted to sort of step away and have a break. So we ended up signing a licensing agreement with Fairfax at the time, who also have AgQuip and FarmFest. And they had it for 2 years and then handed it back. And it was at that time that we came to sort of the conclusion that it was best that I could take it on and move it forward from there. So in 2017, I think we ended up kicking off in about March for a June event, which was pretty full on. We've always been used to a 12-month lead-in time.
Yeah.
And then in April 2017, we had the Lismore floods, and then 10 inches of rain that first year back at Primex, which sort of, as an outdoor event organizer, you haven't really organised an event unless it's outdoors and you've copped the rain that goes with it. And then 2018, we grew it from 220 exhibitors to 320 exhibitors, and sort of then did a bit more of a review of where the positioning of field days is going and all that sort of thing. And then launched, just as a soft launch in 2019, this whole diversion into making sure in the first instance we connect with industry and how we can service those farmers and primary producers a lot better, but also create a showcasing of what the Northern Rivers is about, showcasing that whole food hub, which is an amazing food hub down there, and you just have to drive down in through, even from Tweed and Coogin down, and you've got these distilleries, breweries, and amazing food production that's going on all the way down through to Grafton and the Clarence Valley. So it's an amazing hub for industry, and it's always been somewhere I thought that's been untapped. And it's also one of those things that you feel a responsibility to showcase that region, simply because in some areas the attitude of Sydney is that it's too far away from Sydney to service properly, and from Brisbane it's over the border, and that's been accentuated obviously with what's been going on again in this last week, that the servicing of that region, really, I think the Northern Rivers is going to end up being a significant southern suburb of the Gold Coast. And then you've got an amazing area that sort of spans Brisbane, linking into Gold Coast, linking the Northern Rivers. So there's a huge amount of potential still going forward, and I can't wait to see what that next 30 or 40 years might look like.
Absolutely. So I just might go back a step. Bruce, Primex. Let's talk about what Primex actually stands for, and where you run specifically your trade event every year.
Yeah. So Primex is the primary industry exhibition. So we're an agricultural field day, and a lot of people around the place would know of Henty or AgQuip or Farm Fest and so on. So we're a bit unique because we're a coastal-based field day. We're not a major broadacre like they are, but the diversity of primary production in our region really makes us a bit different. And I'd say that we're probably one of the largest coastal-based agricultural field days in Australia. And when you've got that primary production of anything from sugarcane to macadamias to soybean to beef to dairy and so on, it's been a wonderful time as well, because all these industries will have their highs and lows in the market in primary production, but there's always some that are doing well if others are having a bit of trouble. So that economic stability that's throughout that region from the primary production is pretty cool.
Yeah, and look, as I got involved in your show last year, and I was really impressed. Bruce, you do a fantastic job there. You've got a lot of respect, obviously, in the whole area down there, and you put a really good show together. And to me, in some ways, it was really cool to be part of it all. In some ways, it's a bit like the Ekka, in some ways, isn't it? You've got all these people from the bush and some from the city that are just wandering around, checking out all the exhibits, all the different trade displays. You've got people there with all the different types of products, from huge agricultural machinery down to people selling, jars of honey and all that sort of stuff. So I mean, it really is it's a huge, diverse range of people get involved, but it's just really nice to see, and because it's out in the bush too, it's always great to just have that rural influence and so on. But you do a great job, and I guess for you, this is your annual event, isn't it? I mean, as far as your business is concerned, this is, you've got a week a year you've got the whole year to build up to that 1 week a year, and you live and die off the success of that 1 week. So based on that, as positive as the conversation's been up to this point, let's talk about 2020. Here are you running a huge outdoor exhibition. You've got people who've lined up. You've obviously got a lot of the people who regularly turn up and display with you and book space and hire and so on, have paid, have invested, and COVID comes along, and I always I've had this year. I mean, whilst I was sitting here in my apartment for 2 or 3 months, twiddling my thumbs also, I always used to reflect back and say, I don't think anyone really understands how many people have been affected by the COVID shutdowns and so on. From people who own Airbnbs here outside my window. Everyone's lost income in certain ways, in certain levels. But I mean, you're a guy who, you spin the dice every year on 1 week, and this happens. So do you want to talk about, at the risk of using the word pivot, which is the buzzword, but I'm going to use it anyway. I mean, we've all had to work out with our businesses and say, okay, well, wow, we've been going down the straight line and up comes this brick wall. How do we sidestep? How do we head in another direction? And I'd like to just hear you talk about how this has affected your business, Bruce. What happened, the original date, how you pushed it out, what you did from an online basis, and so on.
Yep.
Thanks.
Well, the CRM that we use, which is basically the management of our database system, a few years ago we had done some research into it and found that what was around there was one actually developed in America called Map Your Show. So we've been using that system, and it's been the lead generating system for us for our exhibitors. So we obviously, in staying in contact with them, knew that there was something coming up in February, not knowing to what extent it might be. But when the announcement made, the first thing was, I think I was saying to you that, you know, the biggest challenge I had was, okay, what is the next step if this is going to happen? And the hardest thing was just understanding what time frame we were talking about, because I used to pull out those pieces of paper which had the bell curve, and the red one's this one, and we want to do the blue one, but I didn't know what the time period was between the left hand and the right hand side of the page. So I guess identifying the key parts of where you get the information was, and the announcement, I think, which was on about the 15th or 16th of March, was, right, there's a public health order in place which actually runs across our dates for May, which means we're dead in the water. What do we do from here? And certainly cancelling was not an option. We had to look at what was best for our exhibitors, knowing that we have had, after the challenges of what I was saying before, of 2017 with the floods, in last year's period, we had this very significant drought which ran for about 6 months throughout the northern rivers, which had a huge impact, probably the worst that it had. And then on the heels of that was also the bushfires that started at Ratville, which is just outside the casino. And so economically, there was all these impacts that were there, and small businesses, family businesses, needing to try and get something going. So there was a responsibility of that, plus the other things that are dynamics with Primex, like the charities that we support and who get raise funds from, and all that sort of thing. So postponement was the key, then finding out what that date was and talking to our exhibitors the whole time. It's been a basis of relationships right across the board. It's been our relationships with our exhibitors and with local government and all that sort of thing that's been the key. So we identified dates in September, and at that stage I thought, crikey, 5 or 6 months, that'll be all right. We should be able to get out of that. And the conversations we had with Map Your Show were, okay, there's this virtual event opportunity, so we started preparing for and supporting our exhibitors for that end of financial year period by launching one of Australia's first ever virtual field days, which we ran through mid-May through to the start of July, which had...
Bruce, can you just explain, just, you know, when you talk about a virtual field day, you know what that means, but
Yep.
People that are watching this, how does a guy with the 15 Massey Fergusons that are normally parked at your, they still make them, don't they?
They do.
The 15 Massey Fergusons that are parked down at casino at your field day, like how does someone like that still get involved in your virtual event?
Well, it's a whole new direction of how things will go, and nothing will ever replace a physical face-to-face contact. As we know, people from the bush, and it's all about that social interaction. And quite frankly, a farmer isn't necessarily going to shell out $100,000 to $300,000 on a tractor without knowing that they can grab someone by the shirt front and have a talk to them about what it's about and how it's going to go. But the next best thing was actually to provide a situation where you went onto the Primex website and you had the full exhibitor list there, and we had about 320 exhibitors on display. Then you could click onto their profile, and there was a product range there, or specific, company names there and suppliers that you could then link into and actually create interaction there. There was special catalogs with equipment and what was available, new innovations. We had webinars and all that sort of thing. So it was sort of like walking into the gates at Primex, but it was more of this interaction online. Which, as I say, is never the same, but we thought for the first time and almost getting 10,000 hits on it for that period of time, and having exhibitors from, like Lismore say, well, we got inquiries from Western Australia, it opens that whole dynamic, but that's what that was all about.
Fantastic. And maybe you'd better remind me who the tractor provider was, so I don't use one that wasn't at your show next time.
No, Massey Ferguson were there. They're distributed by Agro, so you're all over it, Mark.
I'd like to put a plug out for Massey Ferguson. There you go. No, I remember them.
Have a look at the exhibitor list, Mark. They can still have a look at it at primex.net.au, and it's on the Primex online business hub. And we've still got 350 or 320 exhibitors there, and you can just check that out at any time.
Yeah, so let's talk about creating value for all those people, because even though you haven't been able to put on the trade show this year, and effectively that's just 1 year, I mean, let's be frank about this, for you, Bruce, that's just 1 year of income just out the window, down the drain, disappeared, that you'll never see. So, but someone in your position, I mean, it's not about you; it's about the service providers that will be there for you again next year. So, for you, it's about maintaining value, maintaining the relationship by continuing to provide value for these exhibitors, even though from an income point of view, there's nothing in it for you this year, but maintaining that for ongoing years and so on, and loyalty from the past as well. So, you know, you talk about your website is at primex.net.au, and obviously, you know, things like this where you can communicate with each of the service providers, you know, the product providers and so on, is a great way for you to be able to continue to maintain value for them and to showcase them in between the physical events. And I mean, let's be frank about this. I mean, our world has changed, and I'm not sure it's ever going to go back to what it used to be. So the truth is, finding new ways to promote what you do and to communicate value for the people that you're representing and so on. A lot of it in the future is going to be just as we're doing here, Bruce, and you know, through webinars and online portals and all that sort of stuff. And I mean, frankly, you just you know, you just got to look at the car industry over the last 10 years. I mean, back in the day, everyone would walk into a car dealership, they'd kick the tyres, they'd walk around, they'd take it for a test drive. They'd know nothing about it before they walked in the door, and they'd see the red one that they liked, that looked good, went fast. And that's how business used to be done in the car business. So I mean, in a lot of ways, maybe we're all catching up to the way people are treating buying a car, because, you know, certainly in talking to the people that I know in the car industry, customers walk in the door now and they've already done all their research. They know how many cubic whatevers and how many horse thingies and the twin overhead whatevers. You know, they know all that before they come in to place their order, don't they? That's if they come in at all. So a lot of people are already making transition to online. They're purchasing online. I mean, online purchases are way up compared to what they were 5 years ago. So, you know, maybe your opportunity for the future is not just running the actual live field day, because bush people do want, let's say, the shirt front, the eye contact, and all that sort of stuff. But you know, your opportunity is still to provide the second part of that is, you know, in between the field days, is allow people to still be able to go and connect and look at the providers that you have at your field days through online portals. And you know, just think about that as we're talking. Maybe that's the extra value you're going to provide for your people is the two-pronged approach, so that because we could be in lockdown this time next year too. You know, you don't know. So, you know, how do you come up with ways that are going to be still really, really valuable for the people that have been valuable to you? Anyway, yeah, I'm waffling, but what are your thoughts on that?
I totally agree, Mark, and I think there's a huge amount of research that's going online now. You know, but the bottom line is too that with the events themselves, you have a look at the dynamics of our event, and it's not the biggest event, you know, by any means, but we have an immediate impact in the Northern Rivers of injecting nearly $7 million into the local economy. It generates over 110 jobs. Overall, over the following 12 months, it generates nearly $40 million in sales. So there is you look at it from a different perspective, and you go, okay, well, this online phenomenon as we know it is absolutely going to just keep growing, and that's also reflective of the age of people coming through, and we know that farmers are an older demographic, but so many more of them are now getting a bit of help from their you know, because a lot of the family businesses and that sort of thing as well, that they are learning because they have no alternative than to learn and get on there and actually start it. And they are walking into the local tractor dealer and saying, well, we need this with this and this and this, and I saw that you've got that. So there's a lot of that going on. But again, where else can you have a situation where people can all come together? You can go to a showroom any day, 365 days of the year. But the main thing with our repositioning over the last couple of years has been to try and bring that whole brand and product awareness for the customers, bring that innovation of what makes that little bit better. And those sorts of things you can't necessarily penetrate just generally doing research, but having that of access to intel in that physical impact is certainly something that we're conscious of, and that's the direction that the event's going. Education, innovation, and showcasing brand and product awareness are some of the real key parts where we're going.
Bruce, fantastic, and as I'd say, it's also the power of great questions, isn't it? As we know.
Exactly.
But
right.
Look, Bruce, thank you for your time. Our time's up today, and really enjoyed our chat, which has just sort of wandered off in different directions, but been very interesting, and I hope it's a great example of what people like yourself have done under extreme adversity, and certainly in regard to your business, where your whole annual business has evaporated for the year, and it's just great to see the great attitude you still have, the way that you're looking at doing things, still being really valuable for the people that have supported you and will in the future. And I really take my hat off to you, Bruce. You're a good guy, and just to finish off with the TSS connection, you know, in the rugby, we've beaten Nudgee, Churchie and State High already this year. So with that, I'll sign off, mate. Thanks for your time.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, Mark, and thank you for having me.
Good on you, buddy. See ya.
Come on.